The SEC is toying with a 9-game conference schedule, which would mean that each team will have 3 permanent opponents that they play every single year. And Nick Saban, it sounds like, has got a whiff of who Alabama could be paired up with. And the rumor, the speculation is that it will be Tennessee, Auburn, and LSU. Again, all for Alabama on a consistent basis. Nick Saban's not happy about that. He said, I don't know how they came to that conclusion. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's essentially what he said when asked about this whole topic. Said, I'm in favor of more conference games, but I don't get how we have these 3 teams, and he's upset because of the level of difficulty that would present for his football team. So we're going to talk about this from Nick Saban's point of view and Alabama point of view in just 1 second, but I think we need to put that to a side for a minute and take our other hat, our fan hat, and put that on very firmly and talk about it this way. If we were to drop any of these teams from Alabama's annual schedule, from the college football schedule on an annual basis, that would be criminal. That would be criminal. What makes college football so special? There's a lot of pieces to it, but one of the big pieces is tradition. And you're telling me that we're going to have to do without one of these rivalries? I'm not buying that. How can you not have the 3rd Saturday in October played every single year? How can you do without the Iron Bowl every single year? Some of my most fond memories are watching Alabama LSU absolutely duke it out. More likely than not, it's for top spot in the SEC at that point in time in the calendar year. I don't get how you delete any of these rivalries. So I understand Nick Saban's frustration, but from a fan perspective, it would be un-American for us to drop any of these games. Rather, from a college football integrity of the sport perspective, it would be just wrong to delete any of these games on an annual basis. There's more to this, but just looking at this thing from the outside, that's what I think is important to talk about. College football is special because of the way it stood the test of time and all the different changes we're trying to throw at it. This is another one, and I hope that this is the 3 teams Alabama plays. Now, from Nick Saban's perspective, I get where he's coming from. More on that in just a second. If you haven't yet subscribed, would love to have you a part of this. College football content every single day on this channel, on this show. So make sure you're subscribed and make sure you're locked in. Also, follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at JDPakel. Really easy to get a hold of there. I want to hear from y'all. Want to do more of what you want to see then on this show. So hit me up. If you're Nick Saban, I get it. I get it. If you're an Alabama fan, you're upset about having to play these teams every single year. I understand. This is what Nick Saban had to say when this topic came about. He said, quote, we got 3 teams and 2 of them, again, speaking to LSU, Tennessee, and Auburn, he says 2 of them are in the top 10, and the other is in the top 10 a lot. Look, historically, a 25-year history, and the 3 best teams in the East are Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida. You look historically at 25 years, Alabama, LSU, and Auburn are the 3 best teams in the West. So we're playing them all. To paraphrase here, to put that into a more concise statement, these teams are all really good year in and year out. I don't see how we got paired up with these teams. And there's an article on that conversation. I believe it's from Sports Illustrated. I think it's Ross Dellinger that talked about it. Does great work over there. Essentially, Nick Saban's understanding is that they selected these teams taking into account, I would imagine, rivalries, but Nick Saban mentions a 10-year sample size. So take that as you will. But I understand the frustration because all 3 of these teams consistently, for the most part, historically, are relevant, to say the least. Auburn, wasn't that long ago, they played for a national title. A little bit before that, they won a national title. Okay, that was in the modern era, quote unquote. LSU, they won a national title in 2019, so they're not that far removed from that either. Tennessee, historically, I would say in the modern era, hasn't been the Tennessee of old, but they're crescendoing right now in an enormous way. Josh Heupel has got that thing with some tremendous momentum. So if I'm Nick Saban, I'm saying I got to play all 3 of these teams every single year. That's annoying because they're good, but it's even more annoying. You want to know why? Because you look across the conference and you see who some of the other teams have to play. You see who Arkansas draws. You see who Ole Miss draws. And Alabama's running the gauntlet. Alabama is running the absolute gauntlet in comparison to the other teams in their conference that they are expected to outperform year in and year out and eventually meet up with one of those teams in Atlanta. So I get it, 1,000%. I still hold true to what I said about the fabric of college football. But if you're looking at this from a competitive landscape, which if you're Nick Saban and you're Alabama, you absolutely should, it feels a little bit like, we kind of drew the short end of the stick here. Now, here's what I would also say. If you're frustrated with drawing these three teams from a competitive standpoint, college football is cyclical, and college football changes in a violent fashion. The reason why these three teams, in my opinion, right now, are going to be dangerous for the foreseeable future is because of who they have at head coach. Hugh Freeze in Auburn. Hugh Freeze has shown he can win in the SEC. Brian Kelly has a tremendous track record. Already has LSU going the right direction. I already talked about Josh Heupel. You're buying stock in Tennessee like it's going out of style right now. All three of these coaches are going to, in my opinion, keep their programs in a competitive and relevant place while they're the head coach there. What happens if Brian Kelly leaves tomorrow for the NFL? What happens if Josh Heupel gets called up by an NFL team? You see what I'm saying? As long as those coaches are in place, I think all those programs are dangerous, but they're not going to coach forever. They're not going to coach for the rest of time. And that's what these schedule makers, these powers that be, I would imagine, are having to take into account. Yes, Josh Heupel and Tennessee are cooking right now. Yes, LSU is dangerous right now. Who knows what Hugh Freeze and Auburn is going to be? Historically, we know what these programs have been, but for the future, you can't take that into account 1,000%. You can't have that be your defining factor with setting the schedule for the next 100 or so years and saying these are your permanent rivals. What's important to look at is the logos themselves, the history behind those logos in terms of the games they've played, and let the chips fall where they may. Like I said, college football is a beautiful sport filled with tradition and pageantry, and I hope we see these games protected. And just because they seem a little bit more daunting as matchups right now does not mean that's the way they're going to be in 20 years when they're still playing these games. College football cycles through, okay? Nick Saban, the best to ever do it, he's not coaching at Alabama forever. It's just physically impossible for the time being. So that's how I see this shaking out. I get Nick Saban's frustrations, but for college football as a whole, I do hope that LSU, Tennessee, and Auburn play Alabama every single college football season. This has been The Hard Count. Nick Brake Lifting Heavy. This is your show, okay? So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're following me on Twitter and on Instagram at JD Pickell. But we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep the party rolling, and we will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.